Welcome to the latest edition of Stock Up, Stock Down, here with the PHLY Sixers crew. Derek Bodner, Kyle Newbeck, I'm Devon Givens. And we have to get to it because we haven't done this in a while. This is my second Stock Up, Stock Down.
Our investors are just distraught now, Devon. They have no idea who to turn to.
They understand that we've been busy. So we have
I will mention, Kyle and I have done more than 2 stock reports.
Yes. But how many? How many?
Not enough.
Not enough. So we bring you the latest edition of Stock Up, Stock Down. You know how we do it. We throw a random name out there, and we get the thoughts of all three of us, and we get, of course, the card. Stock up, stock down. I won't tell you who has what. You have to figure it out as we discuss it, and you can also talk about it.
It'll take you one person to figure it out.
As well. And then send us some thoughts, of course, on our Twitter accounts and on the show accounts, Discord, whatever you might want to do. So let's start it off here with... Let's start off with someone who has not played for a while. Unfortunately, has not played for a while. We have talked about him quite a bit. One, Tobias Harris. Early in the season, it was stock up, then it was stock down. We talked about him being so a roller coaster. Where is Tobias Harris at this date?
Big stock
has
down.
Not been a big roller coaster lately. It's been trending in one direction. And you mentioned that he hasn't played in a while. It's only been 2 games that he missed. He was actually there for the previous 4. It's just
you wouldn't have known it.
He was just mostly invisible. Yeah, that game against Washington was one of the worst Tobias games we've seen over the 5-year contract that he signed. Which wild. He's going to finish out that $180 million deal, and he is not necessarily going out on a high note. You know, like I said, those 4 games that he played in right before missing these last 2, averaging 15.5 points per game and all of 0.8 3-pointers made per game over that stretch.
How many attempted?
2 per game.
Oh my, that's disgusting.
It's disgusting. You need way more out of him in terms of aggressiveness, in terms of decision making. He had, that game against Washington. He was just careless with the ball. He couldn't make a layup. He has been up and down all season. Whenever he gets on one of those hot runs, we say, well, just wait. I'm sure he's going to be in the stock down segment not too long from now. That is just the nature of Tobias Harris's game.
The most telling thing to me has been that when he's not in the lineup, they've been a more fluid team, right? Like I wouldn't go so far as to say they're better necessarily, but if you are trying to project moving forward, like, oh, this is more what a modern NBA offense looks like, it looks more modern and better with Tobias not in the mix. Yep. And, some of that is due to a guy that we're going to talk about a little bit later, but it doesn't reflect well on the $40 million player that he exits the lineup. They're down to a hospital unit, and they look like a more competent offensive team.
Brett Brown used to always say strong and wrong. He wanted his guys to be decisive, even if it meant they made an occasional wrong decision, because the indecision kills you even more than a bad decision. A correct decision late in the process, 2 seconds late, kills a possession. Tobias Harris is the walking example of that. And even during this 4-game stretch that we're talking about, he shot 46% from the field, 38% from 3. The problem isn't whether the ball goes in the basket or not. The problem is, if he's running a pick and roll, he holds it for 3 seconds too long. If he has an open 3-pointer, he hesitates and passes out of it. It's just he has not been the version that you need him to be a successful offense.
Need quicker decisions. We've talked about it many times. Need more quicker decision when he had that stretch for 2 weeks. We went off 33, 29, 27, 25, 23. He was rolling. They were giving him the ball to close things out because of how much of a good groove he was in. And this is why Joel Embiid and Tyrese Maxey were on the floor. The last bad thing that we saw really was the fact that in the game that they won over Washington, and discussing when he did play against Washington, the one problem that really stood out outside of the glaring things that Kyle and Derek have already talked about in the closing moments of that game, while we were watching it, get him off the floor because they're playing better without him. And they had a rookie.
$40 million guy
and put in Ricky Council.
And they were playing a rookie who rarely plays in crunch time minutes to finish the game out. Stock down for Tobias Harris. All right, let's get to the next one.
And by the way, at some point, I'm sure he will be a stock up because he is that up and down kind of player. That's just the way he is.
There you go. Did you stock? That's just what it is. Let's go to, we already mentioned him. We've talked about him a lot, folks. Go get him, Rick.
Come on. You guys knew where this one was going. Stock way the hell through the roof. We're going with Ricky Council, the 4th stock. I will say, we're saying this at a time that is probably leading up to the point where Ricky doesn't play anymore, if we had to bet money on it.
Don't speak that into existence.
I'm not
Shut your
trying
mouth,
to
Kyle.
speak it into existence. I don't want it to happen. I don't believe it should happen, quite frankly. Like, I think he has earned at least a chance to play regularly. I don't know how many minutes that is. I don't know how big the role should be once everybody's back healthy. But I think the combination of strength, the ability to get to the free throw line, the defensive versatility, and as Derek has pointed out many times, the smart decision-making has been the big standout. Because it's one thing, his tools have been on display from all the way back to college and high school, right? Like, we knew he had a big body, was an athlete, yada, 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 and can do that. For him to be able to utilize all that, but also make, smart passes, not play out of his mind, so to speak, and to keep within the team structure has been the most important thing to me. And I think that's what gives him the best chance to potentially stick in this rotation moving forward.
Yeah. Look, he has been a breath of fresh air. Almost got that completely backwards. Just the athleticism, the hustle, the commitment to defense, the physicality, all of that has been great. I would love to sit here and say I think he's going to be in the rotation 3 weeks from now when they're back playing basketball, and a lot of the players that have been on the bench for a long time or sidelined a long time because of injuries are coming back. First of all, that feels like a first world problem to have because that has not been the case with the team for so long. But assuming that happens, I do think he is probably not going to see the playing time that a lot of people want. But the fact that he has played well enough for us to say, man, I wish he was still playing, completely unexpected and a great shot in the arm.
Oh, the
I
last
think right now we only really sit here and wait to see when he gets an NBA deal.
Yeah, exactly. Over the last 5 games, lost to Golden State here in Philadelphia, 17 points in 10 minutes. Garbage time, but it was good to see Ricky out there and getting some minutes. Also in the Atlanta loss, he had 4 points in 7 minutes, but that's when it really jumped the next game the next night against Washington, where he went 19 and 10 rebounds in 29 minutes. Game 2 against Cleveland, 8 points and 5 rebounds, and that win on the road, including 2 clutch free throws down the stretch. And even in the loss against Miami, still playing 23 minutes, 13 points, 4 rebounds, but good signs, good flashes again, where we hope that somehow, some way, that even though the minutes are going to come down, that Nick Nurse is able to find some minutes for him, and he still trusts him to have him out there on the floor.
And the guy who's probably competing with for minutes right now, who's another, I believe, stock up?
Who's that?
KJ Martin. Nick Nurse said the other night, I asked him about it directly, whether Ricky was in line to stay in the rotation or at least had earned consideration. And Nurse specifically said it's basically him and KJ battling for backup 4 minutes. Now, 4 is probably fungible, right? Like, they've played some 3-guard lineups and done some different things. So it's just that slot in the rotation. But KJ, to his credit, I've not loved him for a lot of this year. I think we've been, I'd say, down on him overall, if I had to sum it up. But they've figured out ways to use him, right? Like as a screener for Tyrese Maxey. He's got the vertical athleticism to be a lob threat and someone who can finish going to the rim. You stick him in the dunker spot. I think they've found utility for him there. Again, the vertical pop really helps because he can go from a standstill on 2 feet to finishing at the basket, even with rim protection there. So he does some things for them, certainly, but I don't really trust him as much as a creator. I think Ricky stands out from him there if we're trying to separate the two. But it's a good problem to have that KJ is on the upswing for sure.
All right, let's move to another one. Let's get to another one. We'll get to, how about Kelly Oubre? Stock up.
I can't even pretend to put the stock up
sign
sign
up. Stock down.
I guess that's my cue, huh?
That's the cue, Derek. Stock down, Kelly Oubre.
It's going down into Derek's computer where it'll never be seen again.
This is why we have a monitor in front of us so we can realize when we're idiots. Yes.
Kelly Oubre had a good game against the Cleveland Cavaliers. They would not win that game without his 24 points in that one. He also had a game where they had 28 in the win against, was it Washington, where he had 28 against Washington. He has had his stretches there where he's been really good, but for the most part, the ones that really stand out are the poor performances, the fact that he's busting up the offense a little bit. We saw them last against Miami. We just talked about that. Needed a better Kelly Oubre performance out of that. So the lasting impression of him, even though he had a good game again in that Cleveland win, it was what we saw once again against the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, the Miami Heat, pardon me, at home where they lost by, 5 points, 4 or 5 points in that one. Had he played better in that 4-for-11 shooting, they might have won that game, Derek, but it was a...
playing better was not a high bar.
No. So that was clearly a stock down for Kelly Oubre there.
Yeah, look, I feel like Kelly is one of those players where the more you rely on him, the less you can rely on him. The more you ask of him, the less you can rely on him.
It's like a fortune cookie saying.
Probably a better way of saying it. Let me rephrase that. The more that you ask of him, the less you can rely on him. Because then the decision-making warts, shut up, come into play.
The more you can rely on him, the less you can rely on him.
Earlier in this very short clip, I tried to say a fresh of breath air, and you put me on video. Stock down for Derek Bodner. Stock way down.
Man.
Look, Kelly's decision-making, when you put him in a larger role, really comes into question. It really shows the warts in his game. On top of that, he's shooting 22% from 3 over the last 11 games.
Yuck.
Part of that comes down to shot selections and the shots that he attempts and the shots that he passes out of, both of which are equally frustrating. And really, his defense has fallen off as well. He is overall putting up pretty good numbers, just counting stats-wise, because he is playing 35 minutes per night and has a very high usage, but the efficiency to get there, the consistency is certainly not there, and the defense has not been there. They need more out of him. And I feel like every time, there'll always be somebody who's like, well, he's a minimum player. That's true, but we're not asking him to step outside of himself and be something that he's not. We're asking him to make better decisions with the basketball and to be more committed and locked in defensively. That is something that any player of any income level, you can ask that of.
Kelly Oubre was aware of Kelly Oubre's problems, he wouldn't be Kelly Oubre.
Yeah.
That's kind of the story with him.
Well, let's end this one on a good note because I think we all know once we throw this name out there where this was going to go. Buddy Hield, our final stock up, stock down of this edition.
Bam.
Way up?
Way up. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I go to the ceiling.
He's not Ricky way up.
Ricky was coming from a much lower place,
Fair.
right? Like I think
His
the
floor was-
expectations
right.
for Ricky were much lower, and he's far exceeded that. But I will say, if you were to make the case that it's way, way up, that Buddy is like AI-related stock for NVIDIA or something, I don't know. That's the case would be he's done so much more than I think we expected coming here.
As a gamer who recently bought a new graphics card, I feel that one. I feel that one in my soul and in my wallet. No, look, Buddy is making nearly 5 threes per game with the Sixers. He's doing so at a 45% clip, 7.5 assists. These are all aspects of his game that have been great to watch. Are you convinced he can sustain? Like, nobody shoots 10 threes a game at a 45% clip throughout the entire season.
Not with that attitude.
He's going to stumble at some point, sure. But the fact that he's been able to help you win 2 of these games while he's been here, when you need to grab every win you can, has been great. And the potential fit alongside Embiid down the line looks like it should be great. I'm excited for that.
I think you've seen him adapt in a role that I think most people would have said is beyond what he's capable of to some degree, right? Like Buddy Hield regularly running pick and rolls with Paul Reed. That sounds like a recipe for disaster, and he's made it work.
Yep.
Granted, against Miami, ends up having 5 turnovers, and some of those were pretty costly in a tight game, but you're also not going to ask him to do that on any kind of regular basis once the team is healthy. It's just it's a thing that Nick Nurse and guys on the team have said throughout the season. They're just things that you put that in your back pocket. That's in your playoff playbook or memory bank, whatever you want to call it. And so the ability to run an action through Buddy and say, I feel pretty confident that he'll make the right read. It might not be a spectacular pass. It might not lead to the best possible shot, but he'll make a good read, get the pass there on time, and he's going to give you a chance to score even if he's not the guy making the shot. I think I've seen everything I would have wanted to see from Buddy so far.
And look, we can bring up the turnovers in that game, but one thing, like when Embiid comes back and Embiid's drawing a double team and another player closes out on Buddy, well, there's just not very many defenders left, and those reads that he is forced to make are going to be easier. And I think he has shown enough that he can take advantage of that. So yeah, he might have instances now where he's maybe overtasked as a creator, and you'll see some turnovers. But that's going to become so much easier in a couple of weeks or a month or whatever it is when Joel Embiid does eventually get back on the court.
And finally, for me, we were having a discussion when someone said that we all know that he's a great scorer. We said, no, he's a great shooter. So far through 3 games, he has been a very, very, very good scorer for this basketball team. So that's one thing, finishing with the left hand, being smart with what he does with the basketball, and finding Paul Reed and the rest of his teammates. And I add on to that, it's the fact that his assist numbers are so high. They have to make the shots, but he has to put them in really good position to do so. Paul Reed, others, he is averaging about 7.5 assists now with this team through the games, the amount of games that he has played. And that's something that I did not expect coming in here. I thought maybe Maxi's assist numbers would, again, start to go up a little bit more, but it has been Buddy Hield playing 44 minutes in that last game. Sure, he had 4 turnovers.
I got tired just watching him run around for 44 minutes.
And that's the thing that you appreciate. He is running around these, these different screens and all. And you're like, how does he still have this energy? He does. So right now, stock up for Buddy Hield. Happy that he's on his team, and we'll see what he gives us going forward.
Look, given how hesitant so many people on this team are to just fire away, he has been a fresh of breath air.
Perfect. So with that, we thank you for hanging out with us with our latest edition of Stock Up, Stock Down. We'll bring that to you another time where we have a little more time in between games, and we'll see, maybe Kyle Lowry might be on that Stock Up, Stock Down report. Some others. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk to you then.
We all silly like the mayor.